Man, the left ain't gonna like this one because this young man, Coleman Hughes, just obliterated the common racism narrative that we see all across the woke sphere.
The way I see it, there are kind of two ways to study history. There's the conventional way, which is, you study World War I, you study the causes and consequences, read different takes on the significance, and once you've studied all you need to know, you move on to the next topic. But then there's a religious way of studying history, which is, it's not enough to know the facts. We have to go somewhere on Sunday, every single week, and talk about the same stories over and over again. So this is, it's the difference between how an atheist learns about the life of Jesus and how a Christian learns about the life of Jesus and relearns it every week for the rest of their life. In my view, how we're looking at the history of race relations in this country, the history of racism, we are more and more putting it in the religious category of history where, I can read a piece about the history of lynching in the New York Times almost, once every 2 or 3 months, right? I mean, lynching is a decades-old crime at this point, and Jesus Christ, obviously it was a heinous stain on this country's legacy, but the number of deaths that is the highest amount quoted in the New York Times with regard to how many black people were lynched in this country is around 4,000, right? Every single year, twice that many black people die of homicide. And you just don't even hear about that in the New York Times.
So what do you make of the fact then, so this is something that like a Sean Hannity will talk about. He'll say that exact thing. Yeah. And now if you say, and then people will say that somehow that makes him racist because he's focusing on black crime or something like that. So how do we have that conversation then? Because I think partly what's happening is the outrage, someone mentions it. He happens to be someone obviously on the right. I don't know what his intentions are. I don't know the guy, but he's at least talking about it. What you just said, people aren't talking about.
Yes.
But then pays a heavy price to talk about it. That then has the chill effect that it's like people are like, all right, I'm not going to talk about it. So we can look at the crime statistics in Chicago every week, and you should care about these statistics, whether people are white or black or whatever. But people are just like, I don't want to touch it because I don't want these labels.
Yeah, it is decidedly. This is one of the reasons why I don't see myself as a natural ally to Candace Owens, for example, because there's so many other things that she says that that I don't agree with, and I guess it's the Sean Hannity problem too, because if you can't criticize a Sean Hannity or a Candace Owens for all of the things that they're saying that are unjustified by the evidence, in Candace's case, it might be climate change or whatever it is. For Sean Hannity, could be other things. Then I guess you just have to be able to make these subtle distinctions. But at the end of the day, homicide is the leading cause of death for young black men, aged 15 to 34, according to the CDC. It is not the leading cause of homicide for any other race or age group.
What's that tell you?
Can we talk about that?
Yes.
Is it the case that we're so close to white people turning the hoses on us again, to the Sean Hannitys and their supposedly deplorable followers, that we're just so, the threat of white supremacy is so ever-present, of resurgent white supremacy, that we can't talk about the leading cause of death among young black men. That is not sustainable. I mean, the fundamental problem I see with how the left in general thinks about race is that the concerns about race and racism are totally unattached to the degree to which black people are suffering on any given issue, right? So we're talking about the leading cause of death for young black men, and I never read about this in the New York Times. And I know that I won't, right? So this is a problem that is central. It is bigger than the problem of police violence. It is bigger than the problem of microaggressions. It is bigger than the problems of systemic bias. And yet, there's virtually no concern for this on the left, because the way I see many progressives think about race issues is a perpetrator side concern, which is if the perpetrators of the problem are white, then it's worth talking about. If the perpetrators of the problem happen to be black, then it's not worth talking about. The problem with that is that it's untethered to any concern for the level of suffering on this side, on the victim side.
He's saying if you care about other black men and women and you're a black person, then why not bring people together? Why not point out when they're doing wrong, when they're slanging drugs, when they're killing their fellow brother and sister? Why not point that out? Why only point it out in cases where it's a white cop or a white man or a white whatever? Why not care about your race in general? Why not care about all races? You know, the fact that we all bleed red, come from the same ancestors, Adam and Eve. Why not go into these communities and say, you know what, y'all are acting up. Why don't you come together and unite and stop all this gang violence, all this relying on drugs and relying on the government? Why don't you show, I'm talking to the black billionaires out there, the millionaires, the people that have made a way, whether you grew up in the hood or whether you grew up with a silver spoon or whatever it may be, wherever you come from, if you have a platform to make a difference and you care about the pigmentation and that's relevant to you, you're chanting Black Lives Matter and all this, why aren't you going into those communities and pointing out the fact that you're killing your fellow brother and sister? It's not the white man is out to get you. It's not lynching and all of that stuff is a prominent issue in today's climate. It's the fact that we don't care about each other. We don't value life anymore. That's what's going on. And this young man, Coleman Hughes, is a breath of fresh air. We need voices like this that point out the fact that homicide is the #1 rate of death in black culture. If you're pointing out black culture and you want to elevate it, you want to put it on a pedestal above any other race and culture and things of that nature, and you want to talk about it, let's really talk about it. Let's talk about the crime rates in Chicago and Oakland and wherever in this world. Let's talk about the HBCU issue with Deion Sanders. Why aren't these people going in and elevating the communities? Why are they so quick to point out when there's racial injustice, but when you have a chance to make a difference, to enhance that culture, why don't you? LeBron James, Oprah Winfrey. Oprah Winfrey's take care of people in Africa and other countries. That's great. That's a beautiful thing. LeBron James started his own school and things of that nature. Diddy, Dr. Dre. Why aren't you going into these violent cities? Why aren't you going into these cities where it doesn't seem like black people care about black people? Why aren't you doing that? Why are you just taking care of the white neighborhoods and the neighborhoods where it's easy to do so? Why don't you go into the ones where it's actually going to be a challenge to change the narrative, to change the way that people view other people? Why don't you do that? But no, that doesn't fit the narrative. That real journalism, New York Times, doesn't exist. It doesn't paint the picture as somebody's out to get you and the white people got their foot on your neck still, like we're back in the 1960s, the 1860s. No, that day and age is over. Like nothing that goes on in today's climate, nothing that goes on in today's world limits a black person to doing anything that a white person can't do. You know what I'm saying? We've had a partially black president. We have I think partially black vice president. Not really sure what her race is. Ethnicity, it really is irrelevant. But since we're going to talk about it, let's talk about all the roles of leadership and success and athleticisms and entertainment and all that. What role can a black person not attain that a white person can? I'm waiting. Crickets, because... And if you get that role, use that platform, use your voice, use your resources to make a positive difference in the communities that are less fortunate, that don't value the life and don't value the next level of, compassion. Let's get back to real love and let's actually do what we say we care about instead of just talking about it.
Do you think it's a fair estimation to say this is the new racism in a weird way? Like it's almost uncomfortable to say it, but I had an educator in the UK here in the summer, Catherine Burble Singh, and that's basically what she said, that these people are now the racists, that the racist ideas of the day are actually coming out of the left. Now, I don't want to use the same tactics, right? I don't want to sit here and be like, they're all racist and blah, 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 because we know that doesn't really get us anywhere.
Yeah.
The general idea of that, do you think that that's a fair way to frame things?
I wouldn't frame it. I mean, the way I would frame it is that there is a kind of racism on the left, and it's the kind of racism where the New York Times hires a writer who celebrates the idea that white people stop breeding, right? And doesn't apologize for it.
Yeah.
No concern with how that's going to translate to, white people in this country who have vastly less privilege than, the tech writer at the New York Times.
And what about that statement that they issued defending her?
Yeah.
You saw that where it said something about the hate she gets as a young Asian woman, and It's like, what? That's now a new thing? Okay.
Yeah, that you get to be racist because you've gotten trolled online.
Right.
Well, so coming back to the question, that that is, I'm happy to call that a kind of racism for sure. It's the only reason I would say I wouldn't go as far as to say they are the new racist is because there are still racists on the other side. Right. And I fully expect there to always be some amount of racist in society and some amount of racist incidents. Like the way, this is another problem with the way many on the left think about race is that they tend to view the problem of racism kind of like we view the problem of smallpox, which is to say something that can be fully eradicated down to the very last person who has it, and then we can put a date on the time when smallpox is no longer a problem forever. Whereas I would argue anyone who's really thinking rationally about this problem should view racism as more like a problem like murder, right? Like the murder rate in New York City used to be 10 times higher than it was today, just 20 years ago. It was absolute carnage. So the rate it's come down tenfold. New York is notoriously safe at this point. Something like 200 murders, 200 or 300 murders last year, right? What would it take to get the murder rate down to zero, to the point where there was not a single murder in New York City?
You'd probably have to murder everybody.
Yes, you'd have to. I mean, you have to embrace a totally totalitarian vibe from the top down. It could be done, but it would not be worth what it took to get there. You'd hit diminishing returns. So I view the problem of reducing racism, reducing racist incidents against black people as a problem like homicide rather than smallpox, which is to say, you can certainly reduce it, and we have massively. But there is a point at which in a country of 350 million, there will always be enough people who are racist to justify a certain amount of racist incidents, and to fight it beyond that endlessly, you hit diminishing returns.
Yeah.
It'd be a beautiful thing if we were all singing Kumbaya, holding hands, lifting up. We were all trillionaires, didn't have to worry about money, didn't have to worry about anything. But no, each day is going to have enough troubles of its own. Emmanuel, Jesus Christ said that. So, and he took on the cross. He was the only perfect person to ever walk this earth. And he voluntarily took on all the worst things you could possibly think of, the evilest of sins voluntarily, so that you could be saved when you look to him and get baptized in his name. But everybody's not going to look to that. So let's be realistic and look at the positive changes that our society has had. Let's be realistic. And when we see things going wrong, when we see black people killing black people, white, anybody killing anybody acting up, anybody that feels like a victim, that's not out there working hard, that doesn't know how, that's relying on drugs, that doesn't have two parents in the home, like, let's help them out. Let's help everybody out. If you're an athlete, a billionaire, an entrepreneur, anybody that has a platform that people look up to as a role model, why don't you go actually make a difference in those climates and cultures that you say that, you know, those are the less fortunate. So why don't you give them some of your resources? Why don't you help them out? Why don't you invest in them and show them how you did it, and that all white people aren't out to get all black people. It doesn't matter what your pigmentation is. You can succeed in this world. And racism is an isolated situation, horrible when it happens, just like murder, just like accidents, just like a disease, a sickness, horrible when it happens. But you can't make it an overwhelming paramount problem when it's not. You can't keep pushing this narrative and giving people this grim outlook on white people based on something that happened years and years ago that's happened to every single ethnicity in human history. It's ridiculous that we keep talking about this, but I think that racism is one of those things. The idea is always going to be talked about because it's profitable. You want it to stop being an issue, stop talking about it. Go into these climates and actually point out the fact that, hey, it don't matter how you look, I'm gonna help you out, I'm gonna help her out. Let's lift each other up. Let's promote marriage. Let's promote godly values. And that's how we elevate. That's how we get better. That's how we stop killing each other and actually value life. And if you like videos like this, don't forget to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe, notification bell, so you could stay up to date on all my videos. That means ring the bell, share this video, get this out in front of other people, because you know it's probably not going to be promoted on YouTube. It might be quieted down. It might be demonetized. It is what it is. People can persecute me all day long, but I'm going to put the truth in front of people and keep on sharing what I know to be the case and spreading biblical, godly values. That's how we get society spinning in the right direction and moving forward towards love and peace and prosperity and true eternal salvation. And you got to look to Jesus if you want that. So I got to share today's verse with y'all, dish out some biblical soul food. Proverbs 27 verse 17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And I know there's different verses across the board. You read whichever one resonates with you best, but iron sharpens iron, what folks should be doing, what all folks should be doing. If you know something, if you can help somebody, if you can lend a hand, lift somebody up, pat them on the back, hug them, squeeze them, pull them in close and love on them some more, that's what we need to be doing. Of all color and creed, we need to be helping everybody out. But it fits the video as well, the fact that my shirt says iron sharpens iron. So if you want to get this awesome design made by my lovely wife, head over to her Etsy store. She's got a bunch of different ones. I'm sure you'll like at least one of them. We got American, Christian, all of that sort of stuff. We appreciate the support. By no means do you have to, but again, we're forever grateful to have y'all here. All my other links are down below as always. Make sure you check those out before you roll out. But until next time, I love y'all. Godspeed. I'm gone.